My name is Jerry Smith. I'm an ordinary guy. I am 5'9", tall, and weigh 155 pounds. I have brown hair and brown eyes. I received average grades in high school and also in college. I'm in good shape for my age. I'm 42 years old. I work as a middle manager in a clothing retail chain. Growing up in a rough area, my size caused me some problems there. If you give in, they'll beat you to pieces. So I never gave in to anyone. Sometimes I got my ass kicked, but usually I punished my opponent myself. After a while, troubles began to happen to me, much less frequently than before. However, I continued to train in the boxing gym until I stopped about 10 years ago. Some of us practiced mixed martial arts. It was much more difficult, and this was my only hobby. I am married to Joanne. She is 42 years old, brunette, 5'6" in tall, has a slim figure and a very pretty face. We met in our first year at university. She studied law, but we studied 2 courses together. At first, we just talked. Then we started dating. Joanne was quite popular at school. All the frat boys wanted to be with her, but she was reserved with them, as far as I could see. She and I became a permanent couple and became close in our second year. It was her first time, and it was almost the same for me. We stayed together until graduation. She went to law school in the state. I got a job at a local bank. We got married that summer after high school and got along very well. We had good sex, varied in intensity. Joanna read about sexual positions and games. We used some of what we read in bed. We had different role-playing games. We had naked evenings where we had to remain naked no matter what happened. We had games of dominance. Although she was tougher in sex than me, we used different poses and different scents. It took Joanna 3 years to graduate from law school. All this time I supported us thanks to my work at the bank. Joanne was very smart and came first in her class. Then I received a job offer from a large firm in Washington, D.C., and really wanted to do it. I was looking for a job in the area and found a position as a bank branch manager. We moved to Washington. There they rented an apartment in the city, not far from her work. I needed to get to the suburbs, but I could have done it by bike or by subway. We didn't have a car. That first year in Washington was difficult. Joanne worked maybe 65, 70 hours a week. I worked less, but cooked dinner, did laundry, and cleaned the house. She was making the same amount as me, and it looked like she was going to get a raise every year. We were in good financial shape, but our personal lives suffered. We met about twice a month. When we did this, things weren't as good as they used to be. After a while, Joanne began to often come home late after work. Dinner was cold, even if I stayed late. I began to wonder about us, and especially about her. I tried to understand what her work life was like. At home, she didn't talk about her too much. She worked with a team of lawyers and paralegals on a corporate merger transaction. As the time for the merger approached, she was at home less and less. One Friday, I visited her during lunch break to surprise her. I knew that she didn't like to dine alone, so I decided to take her to a nearby restaurant for a bite to eat. I arrived at noon, but the secretary said Joanne was gone for the day. Where did she go? To court? No, I don't know exactly where, but I think her group went to lunch, probably at Cicero's. The secretary looked funny when she said that. Well, it's lunch after all. Why for the rest of the day? Maybe I'll see her at home earlier. The secretary lowered her eyes. Maybe. I saw that she was very embarrassed and said goodbye. Thank you. See you. Going out into the street, I headed to the metro station opposite the Cicero restaurant. After purchasing a tuna cheese sandwich, I sat outside and watched the street. About an hour later, Joanne left the restaurant with a group of people. There was another woman, Lydia, whom I knew from social events. There were 3 men with them. 2 were over 30, both large men. The third was older, graying, and not so big. I assumed he was Paul Dorgon, head of Joanne's department at the firm, and a partner. I didn't know the other 2. Joanne walked between the 2 young men. One was dark-haired, and the other had light brown hair and a beard. I may have seen them at a social event, but I wasn't sure. I crossed the street to block their path. The dark-haired guy put his arm around my wife's waist. She didn't move away. I ran up behind them and tapped Joanne on the shoulder. She turned around to see who it was and, turning pale, said, "Oh, Jerry, what are you doing here? The guy was still hugging her, although she turned to me. He looked upset. Joanne stepped away from him. Fred, this is my husband, Jerry. Maybe you met him at the picnic. Joanne blushed. The other three also seemed excited. Paul Dorgon stepped forward, holding out his hand. Jerry, I'm Paul. I actually remember you from the picnic. You played softball. I shook his hand, all the while looking at Fred. He was over 6 feet tall and stocky. I did play softball, and actually at the picnic, I usually play hardball. I was still looking at Fred, and he stared straight at me. Fred, maybe we should do this now, I said. He couldn't answer immediately, and Paul didn't give him this opportunity. Jerry, calm down. We were all just at lunch. The merger thing is over. We had a little celebration. We're heading back now. I think maybe Fred got a little carried away. Joanne recovered enough to speak. Jerry, I hope you don't make a mistake. Fred may have just gone a little overboard with the celebration. I didn't take my eyes off Fred, and he didn't look away either. I smiled. His hands were clenched into fists. He was huddled together, ready to fight. I waited for him. I was completely relaxed. Confrontation, physical confrontation, was one of the things I liked most in life. It could happen at any second. Fred's friend with the beard grabbed him from behind and pulled him aside. Fred tried to resist, but Paul shouted at him, Stop now! Take him away, Bill! Fred relented and allowed Bill to escort him. By this time, a small crowd had already gathered there. Joanne stepped between me and her colleagues. Jerry, you have nothing to worry about or be upset about. Nothing happened. Paul said, Joanne, maybe you should take the rest of the day off. Go home with your husband. There's not much to do now, and tomorrow will be a new day. Okay, thanks, Paul. Come on, Jerry, let's go for a walk. I said, I'm very disappointed. I'll have to go to the gym later. But I left with her. We headed to our apartment. It was in the opposite direction from her office, but that was the direction they all walked when they left the restaurant. The other 4 turned around and walked back toward Cicero and their office. Quite an eloquent act, from my point of view. Joanne and I walked around the city for about 30 minutes or so. We said almost nothing. When we returned to our house and went inside, I brought us some water. I sat down on the sofa, and she sat across from me on the dining chair. It was a small apartment. I said, So, tell me what happened. All about this event. There's not much to tell. You jumped to conclusions. He just hugged me with one arm. There are several errors in your answer, and I'm sure you know it. You're lying and underestimating me. I'm not a fool, even if I'm not a lawyer. Don't lie to me again. Her face somehow wrinkled. She didn't say anything, and she began to breathe quickly. Just calm down and tell me what's going on. I know you took the rest of the day off work. I know you were all leaving work when I saw you. And, more importantly, old Fred was ready to fight, right there in the street. He was going to try to hit me. If Bill hadn't grabbed him, we would have fought right there. So, I think he has some feelings for you that make him hostile towards your husband. She began to cry, quietly, without sobbing. We all worked so hard. We all became close. We worked especially well with Fred. He wanted to celebrate alone with me. And I agreed. Would you bring him here? No, he said he had a room at the Hyatt Hotel. Where were the others going? The 3 of them were also going to the Hyatt. Those 3 had another room. Fred married? Yes, he has a 2-year-old son. She began to sob again. Have you had any sex with him before now? If you lie and I find out, and I definitely will, I will leave you. No sex, a couple of kisses, a hug, no stripping. What about the other 3? Is this some kind of normal thing for them? I think Bill and Lydia may have met in secret a few times. Paul just wanted to watch. Bill and Lydia are married to others? Yes, Paul too, but his wife is sick. Have you ever cheated on me except this time? No. And it wasn't a lie. You saved me. It doesn't make much difference. You destroyed all the trust I had in you. I think that if I slept with him, it would be a big difference compared to what happened today. But I see that trust can become an issue. I don't know what to say. I will never allow myself to get into this situation. You're saying that now. But what's going to happen at your place of work on Monday? They'll all want to know what we talked about. Besides, that Fred guy won't give up, whether he has a child or not. I've seen how strong his feelings are. Has a fondness for you. What are you going to do about it? Maybe you should quit this job. I can't just quit. We need the money. And I love this job. I'm really good at this job, and I'll get promotion after promotion. I understand. How do I know if you're keeping the straight line? Because I need some reassurance. Let me think. I thought about it. Leverage was necessary, and leverage had to be found. Tell you what, you will write a confession. It will contain everything you told me about, even in more detail. You will sign it and give it to me. For what? Oh, I understand. There will be a threat to all of them. Yes, I'll make copies of them all. And add a little note. I want you to swear to the truth of the confession under penalty of perjury. That's what we did. She went into detail about what happened, and even her suspicions about what was going on between the others. Then we went to dinner at a cafe down the street. She relaxed a lot when we drank a bottle of red. Then we returned home and immediately went upstairs. I fucked her hard and long, and we finally, exhausted, fell asleep. In the morning, I fucked her hard again. Then I made copies of the confession. I placed them in 4 envelopes marked personal and confidential. And he added a note. In it, I made it clear that if I learned of any further sexual shenanigans involving my wife, in any case, I would mail a confession to each of their spouses. An exception would be made to the one who informed me about it. In this case, no mail would be sent to that person's spouse. I thought it would create some tension in the team, but does it make me feel better? It was Saturday, and I went to the gym for some sparring and heavy bag work to get some of my anger out. Well, maybe there wasn't that much of it. The guys noticed this. I'm having trouble finding a partner, but a lot of work with the punching bag did the trick. Jane, one of the few women who worked out at this gym, asked me what was wrong with me. Just some life issues. I'll deal with it. She smiled. Despite her hobby, she was a cutie, with a nice figure under that training bra. Well, if you need any help or anything, let me know. I will do so. I looked at her longer than usual, and she didn't look away. But then, we both turned away. I think she just got mad watching me work the punching bag. However, I remembered her words in case Joanne got something wrong, but she didn't. On the way home, I stopped at a fancy spy store and bought some gadgets. So, I now have 2 voice recorders. One is very small, like a pen. In fact, it was a pen. But it also did up to 12 hours of recording, presumably voice-activated. I put it in Joanne's purse when I got home. There was little danger that she would notice him, given the state of her purse. I could download data from it remotely. Another voice recorder went into our main room. It was hidden under the sofa, next to the bedroom door. I could turn it on and off using the remote control. I left it on when I wasn't home, and generally turned it off when I was home. On Saturday evening, we went to the cinema, then bought ice cream. It was a nice date, and neither of us mentioned our problem. On Sunday, we also relaxed. I was watching a football match on TV. Joanne was reading a romance novel. We had dinner at home and went to bed early. We had a nice session of gentle sex. I felt much better, especially since both voice recorders were in place. On Monday morning, we went to work. I gave the envelopes to Joan so she could give them to her team. I knew she would do this because I believed she loved me and saw this ploy as a way to keep us together and allow her to continue working at the firm. Also, I had my recording devices. I lacked confidence, so devices were necessary. I went to work by bike. It was a normal day, and I had cooked fried chicken for dinner when Joanne walked in around 6 p.m. And how did your team like my envelopes? I called them all into the conference room. He's one of those bug-free ones. They were all worried about Friday. I said, you knew right away what was going on. I told them you asked me to quit my job, but I wanted to stay. Then you came up with this plan. I gave them the envelopes. They all quickly became unhappy. It's interesting because it took them a while to appreciate what you did. Everyone except Paul, who understood immediately. He really smiled when I read it. I think we should hire your husband, he said. This document is the product of a cunning and resourceful mind. Anyway, she continued, in the end they all saw what he saw. I admit, that there were a lot of side looks at me, but then everyone just went off and went about their work. I don't think that the team will last a long time, maybe just a day or so. If I were the manager, I would split us up. Later, I listened to the downloaded material. The meeting went exactly as she told me. However, I found that after that everything else became so boring that it became useless. Here are the technical solutions for you. Even though I saved Joanne, I was on the verge of a breakdown over our marriage. I could not constantly look after her, and I was not sure of her unfailing fidelity. She had many chances to deceive me. Women like her constantly fell for seducers. Strong pressure, soft pressure, subtle pressure, but still pressure. Maybe she learned her lesson, maybe she didn't. I decided that we needed to talk further. This was approximately 4 weeks after the incident. Her team was sent in different directions, but they all remained in the DC office, except for Lydia. She's the one I wasn't worried about at all. One evening after work, before dinner, I was sitting at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of wine. Joanne, we need to talk, I said. This worried her. She sat up and looked at me. What? I thought we were fine. It's actually good. I can't seem to shake off the issue of mistrust, even with your confession. You know there are some loopholes in this document. I would like a better explanation as to why you agreed to cheat on me with Fred. I liked him. I found him attractive. And I didn't think you'd ever find out since it was supposed to be a one-time thing. That's the lesson I learned. I love you, and I want to be only with you. But you knew it would be risky. Your whole office knew what it was. If you had looked at it logically, you would have had to give it up. But I think you had a real passion for Fred, so much so strong that you risked your marriage and he risked his. It makes me feel violated that you were so into him. There's nothing I can do about it. I told you I'd be honest. Either way, I'll never know what it might have been like. Did he have a big instrument? I shot it at her. She looked away, embarrassed. I asked, how big, and how do you know? Our hug was quite tight. It was only a few times, but it was when we danced, pressed closely together. A woman can understand a lot. He seemed big. But I agreed not that's why. Maybe partly. But mostly I was just close to him. And I liked him. Like it was a reward for completing a job successfully. It required close teamwork. It wouldn't work if we didn't get along with each other. But this work was constant and very close. I was with him more than with you for several months. So he somehow took my place? And you knew he had a bigger tool than me. I don't see this as a one-time thing. Maybe you thought so, if you thought at all. No, he didn't take your place at all. She sniffled again and rushed at me in a rage. Relax. I just needed to have this conversation. I hope you will analyze what you said and use it to avoid another episode, because one more episode will finish us off. There won't be another time. You know it has everything to do with your work. The intensity of the case brought people together working together. One thing led to another, and you'll have the same dynamic in the next project. I just hope you see this coming and stop it before we reach a disaster. I'll keep all this in mind. Don't worry. She looked at me. Let's go upstairs, she said. We can eat later. We went upstairs. And we ate much later, reheating the leftovers. The next week, I took the opportunity to install a program hidden in the programming database on her phone. I could track her messages and the numbers she called. From time to time, I listened to the tape recorder. There was nothing for 3 months. I asked to talk after dinner. I think we should try to start a family. Now is the time. Oh, Jerry, I'm not sure. What about my job? You want kids? It's better now than later when you have a lot more things on your mind. You can work while you're pregnant. After that, you'll have to take some time off. But I can help. I don't have a stressful job like you. I did a little day trading and was doing well. We have enough money to find a house. What do you say to that? Fine. If we find a house we like, I'm game. We actually found a house on the other side of the river, but still not far. It had 3 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, a patio, and was in a respectable neighborhood. I bought it. I paid for it directly, and it was in my name. Joanne didn't like it, but I insisted. I told her it was money I earned, and the house was my gift to her and our future family. In any case, if we divorce, the house will be treated the same as if it were jointly owned. She agreed. We moved, and she stopped taking her pills. 3 months passed before she became pregnant. We have a boy, Jacob. Joanne returned to work after 2 months. We had a nice lady come in during the day until I arranged my job at the bank to be mostly independent contract work from home. I drafted agreements with other banks, reviewed contracts, and did odd jobs that others thought no one should do. I also continued my day trading. I got even better at it. When Jacob was 3 years old, Joanne became pregnant again and worked hard until she gave birth. Gemini. Of course, we already knew in advance that there would be a girl and a boy. Jennifer and Todd. This time my mother came to help with the children. He and my father moved to Arlington. Joanne returned to work after 3 weeks. Jacob was fascinated by his siblings, as was I. I loved being a father. I left the bank and went solo as a consultant on the mechanics of bank mergers. I mostly worked at home, on the computer and phone. My mom started spending less time with the kids, saying she needed to see Dad more. They retired and went on a trip. Joanne became a partner in her firm when Paul retired. The children are now 10 and 7 years old. We are 36, and we look respectable. Somehow like this. Joanne was not really close to her parents. They lived far from here. We saw them on vacation, maybe 1 week in the summer on vacation. When her father fell ill, she went to visit him, but he got worse and soon died. Joanne was survived by 2 sisters who lived near her mother. So after the funeral, Joanne went straight back to work. I started to worry about her working so much. I again wondered if she was moving away from me again, or maybe she fell in love with someone else. Our sex life was fine, given the presence of children, but now they were old enough, and we had more time for ourselves. However, the intensity of our sex life has not increased. Joanne wasn't the busiest mother either. She, of course, loved children. She played games with them, wrestled the twins on the floor, made them do their homework when she was at home. They loved her too. But day after day, I raised them. I took them to school and took them home. I went to football games and coached them. My work took up less and less time. But I still spent several hours in the gym every week. I sparred and worked with bags. Sometimes I come home with bruises or cuts. This has become commonplace. Joanne threw a celebration party to celebrate her partnership. There was a dinner dance at the Hyatt Hotel. The company was large, and more than 100 people were present at the dinner. This dinner was not just for her. 2 of her other colleagues also became partners. Fred was already a partner. A year ago, we even went to his place for dinner. He brought with him his wife, who was very pretty. Now they also had 3 children. We had a pleasant evening at this party. Fred and I spoke politely as I shook his hand. After all this time, there were no macho stunts. Fred and his wife were also at the partner party. When the dancing started, I danced with Joanne for a while, and then we sat down again. A younger man approached Joanne and asked her to dance. Joanne said, "Jerry, this is William Pullen. He works for our company." She let him take her hand, and they went down to the dance floor. While they were dancing, Fred sat down next to me. Then it was only us at the table. "If I were you, Jerry, I'd keep a close eye on Mr. Pullen," Fred said quietly. "Just a few words. I remember our little problem, and I wouldn't want to be blamed for not warning you, even after all this time." I watched them dance. "Are they close at work?" "Close. They work together every day. I'm sure she mentioned him." "No, as far as I remember, no." Fred said, "I remember what it was like when she and I got close. The dynamic was probably similar to that. That's all I'm saying. I don't think anything too bad has happened yet." Thanks for the tip. I would never ruin my relationship with you and your family except, you know, one time. That won't happen. Fred stood up and walked away. Pullen and Joanne stayed on the dance floor for one more dance. It was a slow song. I was very attentive. Pullen was over 6 feet tall with a swimmer's build. He moved well. He had sandy hair and blue eyes. These two clearly didn't seem to be involved in anything untoward. They just looked like a dancing couple. Maybe Joanne and I looked like that too. I was a little worried. I thought about asking her about it. And if they continued to dance, I thought I would intervene. But after a slow dance, he walked Joanne back to our table. She asked him to sit down, and he sat down. Joanne said, "Jerry, William, and I have been working on the Monroe case for some time now. I thought I'd introduce you." "Hello?" he said. "Hi, how long have you been working at the company?" "About a year. I came from New York to work in Congress, but Monroe took up a lot of my time." "Is this going to end soon, or—" Joanne said, "We hope this case is close to a conclusion, but nothing is set in stone. This is a regulatory matter. We will present it to the FCC next month." "Oh," I said. I felt like yawning, but I didn't. "Where are you staying, William?" "I have an apartment in Northeast Short. I thought I would spend time on the hill." "Maybe that will be later. I can still ride my bike to work." I used to do that, but now I'm mostly at home. Joanne said, "Jerry runs his own banking consultancy business. He can do it from our home and make sure the kids are okay. It's a good environment for us." "Yeah, sounds perfect," Pullen smiled. I didn't like his smile, but I didn't react at all. "Okay," he said. "I'll go. I'll have to get home early." "Someone is waiting?" "Yeah." He left with a slight wave to us. I watched Joanne watch him. She turned to me and saw that I was looking at her, looking intently. "He's a good guy, Jerry." It seemed to me that she was a little defensive. "I'll take your word for it, although I haven't heard anything about him." "Why?" "I don't know. I thought I mentioned him. We've been working together for some time now. I guess we just haven't talked about my work too much lately." "Yeah, I guess that's true. Let's dance a little more before we go." The rest of the night went well. We danced merrily. When we returned home, we had fun in bed. Better than in a long time. I thought about role-playing games as if I were Pullen, but I didn't. The next day, Saturday, I took out my recorder and put it in Joanne's purse. I just didn't feel comfortable around her. I certainly didn't need her to stray, what with our kids and all. The voice recorder and telephony program, new for the new phone, were simply to calm me down, but everything turned out completely wrong. When Joanna came home from work that Monday, I took the time to sit down at my laptop and download the recording. When she went to bed early, I listened to the recording through headphones. I didn't like what I heard. Early in the morning, a conversation took place between Joanne and Pullen. "Hey, Will, come in." The sounds of a chair on the carpet. "I enjoyed our dance on Friday night. Thank you. I hope Jerry wasn't annoyed. I admit that I was surprised when you asked me to dance while he was there. I told you, well, I saw Fred talking to Jerry while we were dancing." "So what? What does this have to do with us? In any case, he didn't seem hostile at all. And we didn't do anything wrong, nothing even suspicious. Fred and I were close a long time ago. He and Jerry almost exchanged blows on the street, and nothing happened. Well, maybe that's what should have happened, but it never happened. And so far," he said, "nothing has happened to us. Not yet." Jerry will be on his guard, I tell you. Whatever we want, I won't risk my family. He would leave me, and he might just beat you up. He was going to beat Fred up. He can't beat any of us, and why would he leave you? You earn money for the family." "Ha! Somehow he makes a ton of money in stocks. I don't even know how much. But he bought our house outright 12 years ago or so. Also, don't be tempted to pick a fight with him. You've been warned." "Why would he even want to know anything? We could be careful. I know you want that." "No chance, Buster, no matter what I want. It's time to get to work." I was more than a little irritated by what I heard. I could see that if they were given half a chance, they would mate like rabbits. I saw the same situation as Fred, just like Fred said. I had to think about whether I wanted to save Joanne this time or not. I felt a sense of impending divorce due to Joanne's infidelity. Sooner or later, she would lose her way. I thought about what divorce would be like. I thought about the children. I assumed that I would get custody and she would be able to see them on some schedule. Our finances were not an issue. I had a lot of money. But she also had a very well-paid job. I also transferred a decent amount to offshore accounts. Her law firm will probably find something. Not all. In any case, if she got rich after the divorce, I would still be rich, and I would still have my little trading talent. In general, I was not so afraid of divorce. If this happened, I had to do everything in my power to protect the children from getting hurt too much. I didn't think Joanne would really want to be a guardian. It made me wonder what her life would be like after the divorce. She really had no friends, not even close ones. Sometimes she dated women from her work, but she was really completely absorbed in her work. I had guys in the gym and women in the gym too. I was friendly with the other parents and sometimes went out for a beer with my fellow coaches. I went to ball games with two of these guys and we got to know each other pretty well. But Joanne wasn't so friendly. She spent little time at home to be able to have friendly conversations. While I knew some of the guys in our area and their wives, Joanne didn't really know anyone. I thought she would get a lot of sex if we divorced, but I didn't think she would interact much with anyone, not like we had, even now. And that's what made me intervene in her relationship with Poulin. I loved her, and I loved her for a long time. I couldn't bear the thought of her being alone in this world. I made arrangements with my parents, who were in town, to pick up the kids Friday through Sunday afternoons. Now I spend a lot of time listening to recordings and checking messages and phone numbers. I wanted to see how far things had come. A conversation took place between the two of them. Apparently, the matter was suddenly close to completion. Joanne said, "Will, I think we can finish this in about 2 weeks. We might have to go to New York to finish the job. Maybe we could do it midweek and stay overnight. You're a very bad guy, Will. I don't think Jerry would like the idea of us going away for the night at all. Just tell him it's necessary and he has to trust you, that's all. He's not stupid. He'd have some way to check what we're doing. He doesn't trust me. Don't tell him until after tomorrow night. Then he won't be able to arrange anything. Of course he could. He could just come with me, offer to take me to a show, and I would have to live with that. Listen, Joanne, when this thing is over, I want to celebrate with you and only you, alone. You want that too, right? Yes. I'll think of something. We could just rent a room in the city, or you could come to me on a weekday. I think it will work, Joanne said. Take a taxi, stay home from lunch until dinner. Might work more than once if everything goes well. Joanne laughed. Deal. Shake him. Some shuffling sounds were heard. Enough. Joanne was breathing heavily. I'm leaving. See you tomorrow. The door opened and closed. That evening, after the kids had gone upstairs, I called Joanne to the kitchen table to talk. She looked worried. I think you and your assistant Poulin have become too close. I've lost trust in you. Well, I was wondering if I should just let things slide this time and you'll reap what you sow. But I thought I owed you more than that. And I thought about our children. When Joanne heard this, she was overcome with emotion, sadness, and anger. Her face was about to scrunch up, but then she pulled herself together and sat up straight. I'm not denying that I have feelings for William. I'd really like to act on them. Are you saying you were just going to let it happen? I was ready for this. Then we would just have to get a divorce. That would be the end of us. But I thought we could talk about it before all this happened. I love you, and I'm trying my best to stop this. Bye, you haven't gone too far. Well, she snorted. Thank you very much. Joanne, it's true. It's on your conscience. You either need to control yourself or decide to start a new life. I hope that before you decide, you'll think about what that new life could be like. You'd have a fun affair with a boy, a toy, and what after that? Are you really going to divorce me because of an affair? There's absolutely no doubt about that. I don't want to get a divorce. What I really want is, well, I think I need a little wiggle room. What does this mean? You want to be able to cheat on me and not get divorced. Keep dreaming. Why don't I get, just once, the chance to test someone else? You can experience whatever you want. I'll be filing on Monday. Make arrangements to move somewhere as soon as possible. You'll get a couch in the living room tonight. Jerry, stop it. I was just joking. I wouldn't ruin our marriage. You weren't kidding. We both know it. I won't trust a word you promise. I don't want to take on the burden of watching you all the time. Anyway, you could just sneak out some afternoon with that boy. We're done. Joanne asked, "What about the children? You can spend as much time with them as you do now. Maybe more, considering they rarely see you." Fine, if that's what you want. But if you give me just a little bit of wiggle room this time, I'll never ask again. Until the next big thing. That's it. Go. Joanne stood up and packed her bag. She is gone. And she rented a motel room where she spent the night. The next morning I got dressed and went to work. Will walked into her office just after 9 a.m. "We can do it this afternoon. I don't have anything urgent, neither do you." "Fine. Let's have lunch at your place at noon." "Great. Jerry kicked me out last night. I was staying at a hotel. I asked him for permission to, have an affair just one time. He became icy and threw me out. I told him I was joking. He didn't believe me. I think I wouldn't believe myself either." "What are you going to do, get a divorce?" Will looked worried. "I'll try not to. I'm not sure he's serious about that. If he divorces you and claims adultery, we could both be in trouble. Maybe we should cut him some slack." "I don't want that. I want my fling. With you. Today. How can he even find out?" Will was overcome with desire for Joanne. This clouded his judgment. Fine. They met right outside the office at noon. Then we took a taxi and went to his house. Will opened the door. Joanne turned and hugged him. She was excited all day. She could feel his arousal through her skirt. They had a very passionate kiss. Joanne stepped back and took off her blouse. Then she took off her skirt. Will watched as she surrendered to him. They had sex. It was as strong as she expected. New man, the thrill of illicit sex. This combination was perfect for sex. When it was all over, they fell next to each other. "Was it worth the risk, Joanne?" "Oh, yeah." She smiled at him. They spent the rest of the day in or next to his bed. They didn't even have lunch. At 6, Will said it was time for him to leave, and Joanne got dressed. She wondered if she should try to return home. Jerry couldn't know what she did. Maybe he changed his mind. She made sure to clean herself up before leaving. Then I caught a taxi on the other side of the river. There was no one at home. Joanne thought the kids were probably at some extracurricular activity. She was sitting in her kitchen eating a sandwich. Then I drank beer. Then she looked around where she had lived for so long. If she had to leave, she would be sad. She decided to brazenly talk to Jerry. There was no way he could have known what she did, she told herself. She could promise him that she would be faithful. She could point out that she had been faithful to him ever since her slip-up with Fred, which wasn't a slip-up at all. It was so long ago. Jerry and the kids arrived around 7:30 p.m. They played children's basketball. All the children were happy to tell her about it. Jerry just sat on the sidelines and watched. When they had all eaten, Jerry shooed the children up the stairs to get ready for bed. "Why are you here, Joanne? I thought I made everything crystal clear." "I have decided to withdraw my request for room to maneuver. I understand that it was a big mistake. I take it back. I just want to stay with you and the children." "Too bad. Where were you this afternoon when I tried to call?" "I had a meeting with a client. You know, we have a phone app that allows us to find each other's phones. I used it while you were out of work. You were in Will's apartment for several hours. Any comment is pointless. So what kind of meeting was this?" How could you test me like that? How could I not check? You've been having sex with this guy all day, and now you show up here and say you're withdrawing your leeway request. Such nonsense. We're done. He said this with emphasis, but without shouting. Jerry got up and went upstairs to put the kids to bed. He made them more comfortable. They were all tired after a long day. When he came downstairs, Joanne was sitting at the table. "I'm sorry I did it. I won't do it again. I still don't know why I did it." Just get out, Joanne. Wait, tell me, was daytime sex worth losing your marriage and family? Because I think you believed it was worth it, and that's why you did it. Yeah, it was good, I liked it. Joanne was a bit provocative. Jerry didn't care. I'll file the paperwork as soon as I can. Don't come back here. I'll send movers and take your things to wherever you pick them up. Maybe take them to Will, right? Joanne left. The divorce was easy for both parties. Joanne insisted on free access, but her finances were all right, and she didn't ask for anything. Jerry didn't ask for alimony either. The children quickly got used to the new reality. Joanne picked them up every other Sunday for the whole day. As a result, they began to see her almost as often as before. Joanne and Will maintained their relationship for about a month. Then she became wary. He started dating a younger woman. She didn't mind, but she didn't like the risk of contracting an STD, and Will wouldn't use condoms. They ended the relationship. Joanne wasn't all that upset about it. Sex, after the first time, became ordinary. She was much better off with Jerry, who was much more creative. Jerry was happy with how everything turned out, except for one thing: Will. He couldn't be allowed to leave without getting a stomachache. Jerry used some time in the middle of the day to study Will. He also watched him from time to time. At first he saw Joanne with him, but later another beautiful blonde. He assumed that Joanna and Will were no longer in a relationship. Jerry hired a firm to conduct further research and spy on Will. He asked the lawyer to review the documents prepared by the firm where Will signed the contract. Jerry found out that Will was an amateur boxer, sang in the church choir, and had relationships with several women, none of whom actually knew about the others. He also discovered that the law firm had billed Will for many more hours than he actually worked. Jerry didn't think it was all a ploy to play a trick on Will. He hid it. One day, while Jerry was jogging, Will ran up behind him, giving him a quick push. They were in the park near Jerry's house. There was no one nearby at the time of the shock. It was after 11 on Saturday. Joanne had the children. Jerry realized he could benefit from Will's arrogance. Jerry, I know you're investigating and following me. Stop it. It's over between me and Joanne. I don't need your crap. Fuck you, boy. I do what I want. Jerry growled. He laughed at Will. What are you laughing at? I took your wife. Not that funny, right? Good riddance. I see you didn't keep her long. Has she found better sex? Ha! You're one of those people who can only talk, old man. Jerry saw that Will was getting more and more worried. Some people entered the park, but he did not see them. Will was very tense, as if he had not just come to talk. Jerry decided to push things forward. Old or not, I can beat you like a drum with anything, so just fuck off. Jerry said this, but began to back away from Will. He stepped towards him, encouraged by Jerry's apparent retreat. Then he pushed Jerry hard. Jerry took the blow and fell backwards. He went down on purpose. Will stepped towards Jerry and kicked him in the stomach. Jerry took the blow and rolled to the side. He saw this coming. He barely felt the blow, although he had a bruise the next day. People who had come to the park ran towards Will, shouting at him to stop. Jerry jumped up when Will was momentarily distracted. He pushed Will. You brute, Jerry mocked him. Attached to a smaller, older guy. You should be ashamed. Will was on edge over this. He knew Jerry was making fun of him. He launched a full attack on Jerry. The people around the stage, 2 men and a woman, were too timid to intervene. Jerry let Will get closer, then turned and punched him in the stomach. There was a loud "ooh-vee" sound, but Will took a boxer's stance and threw an overhead punch right at Jerry. Jerry couldn't help but admire this. He hit Will hard, and he knew it hurt. Jerry dodged the right hand and hit Will in the stomach again. He then threw a left hook to his kidney, and he pushed him towards the swing and hit him several more times in the body area. Jerry stepped back, and Will fell to his knees, clutching his stomach. Jerry turned and walked away. All this took less than 2 minutes, and the real damage done to Will was done in 20 seconds. The people who were watching came up to him and helped him up. Jerry crossed the street and ran away. As he did so, he saw a police car drive up to the park with its lights flashing but no siren. Jerry never heard from the police or Will about this fight. He suggested that witnesses told cops that Will started the fight and then lost it. Or maybe he simply refused to file a complaint. Jerry decided the fight with Will was enough. He knew he had deceived him and that if they fought again, Will might win. The two never saw each other again. Meanwhile, Joanne analyzed the entire situation, hoping to understand how she could have lost control for Will. She gave up a good marriage and a good family life for an affair with Will. Looking back, we can say that it was monstrously stupid. Joanne decided that it wasn't Will she really wanted so much that she gave up on her family. It was her job. This was what she was most passionate about. That's why she almost screwed Fred. That's why she fucked Will. She loved her job so much that she wanted to fuck her colleagues, especially those with whom she worked closely. Sex was the ultimate intimacy. She kicked herself for not noticing this sooner. She decided that this was a flaw in her behavior. She will have to be careful in the future, although it may have been the closing of the barn door after the horses ran away. What she failed to understand was that the affair was her way of distancing herself from her family. This allowed her to work, without the guilt of not living up to the mom paradigm. Now the family was neatly divided into two parts. Part of it every second. Sunday. Jerry moved forward smoothly. He started dating about a year after the breakup, meeting a sweet woman who was a single mother of 8-year-old twins. Her name was Naomi. They had several pleasant dinner dates. He then invited her and her children to the Sabbath. They all got along well with each other. Jerry was happy because he really liked Naomi. He asked her to go with him to a resort for the weekend. He made it clear that it was for sex. They took care of the kids, left on Friday, and had a great time. Naomi was a sexy woman. Jerry, an ordinary man, had a sexual talent that she had never experienced before. About 6 months later, he proposed to her. She agreed, and the families were united. Jerry had to buy a new house with more bedrooms away from the city. He missed the old house, which was now being rented out. But the new one had a swimming pool and a pool table. There was a heavy pair in the basement, just right for Jerry. Jerry was pleased with how things turned out. He did not regret leaving Joanne, despite their long marriage. She was an unfaithful workaholic. He was convinced that Naomi would not deceive. She was an elementary school teacher, not a lawyer working under pressure. He didn't feel the need to keep an eye on her like he did with Joanne. It was much more comfortable and allowed more love to grow. She was really growing. Jerry and Naomi both considered family to be the center of their lives. Their united family kept them busy and fulfilled. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.